Things seemed pretty normal in my hometown. The recent storms haven't been new, nor has the amount of students absent from classes. It's the cold season, it's to be expected, right? I should introduce myself. My name is Ruby. Everyone calls me Rue, so we'll stick with that. Before I continue, things aren't normal here. The normal sandstorms have become more violent. There have been snarls and screams ringing out during the night, too. I tried to ignore it for days now. They just keep getting louder. One day, as I was walking home from college with my friend Stephanie, we heard the sirens ring out. The sirens that the end was near. The town was set on lockdown almost immediately. In the midst of the panic, I ran to my parents' bakery to make sure they were alive, so that we could escape together. It was too late. When I got there, the police pushed me back. All I heard were the screams of those getting infected. I tried to scream for my parents, but as an infected came closer to me, an officer a bite for me. In a panic, another officer ran with me to the nearby police cars to escape to the nearest city, Olympus. As we drove, an infected latched onto the car, causing the officer to run off the road and crash the car. I managed to get out of the car, but my face was burnt. I couldn't see out of my right eye. The scar on my face opened from the peeling and sickly burning skin. It hurts. I thought the pain ended, but it didn't. I felt a throb on my arm. Looking down, I realized I was bit. In a panic, I tried to run, running for what seemed like hours until I blacked out. This was it. This was my end. The fire of the car was spreading. I was surely going to die here. Already dying. Slowly. This just be a quicker release, right? As I closed my eyes, I saw someone near me. But I was just waiting for the sweet release of death. Then, when I woke up, I heard a voice. Familiar and sadistic voice. But who is it? I didn't know. My ears were ringing from the impact of the crash and the sudden changes in the air. I looked over to see someone unconscious next to me. What happened? Where was I? Using what strength I had, I stood up to look around. But I was in a cage. How strange. But this was the beginning of the apocalypse. Why was I in a cage? Chapter 2. New Faces. As everything began to clear up in my line of sight, I noticed a few figures I didn't recognize in the area. A guy and a girl. The guy had on military gear and a gas mask over his face. His voice sounded early 20s at best, and he was holding a knife of sorts. The girl was also in military gear, covered by a gas mask. Her hair poked out, so I could see some of it. Dark brown with pink dye. Her voice was also early 20s, but she had a sword or a machete, I can't tell. They were talking with a third figure. He sounded demanding, and like an asshole. Soon, these people approached the cage I was locked in. The door opened, and as the guy and the girl entered the cage, the door locks behind them as the third guy walks off. It took another moment for my hearing to return to normal. As it did, I heard the girl speak.
Hey, are you okay?
The girl speaks. Her voice is much clearer now and easier to hear. She sounded concerned, but why? She didn't know me. Why was she worried? I start to say, clearing my throat. I'm okay. Thanks. He's out cold, though, I finally say, turning to look at the guy on the ground. The other man knelt down to him, placing his hand on his neck. He let out a sigh of relief. He says in relief, nodding to the girl next to me. The girl nods back, and she helps me stand up. And more people enter the mansion. The first guy, who seems to lead the group, looks about mid-20s. A scar visible on his face, which is covered by an eye patch. He's in military gear too, armed with guns and ammo. Behind him stands a few more people. On his right is a girl and another man. The girl has olive-colored skin with black hair and deep brown eyes. She's dressed in overalls covered by military gear as well. The man is slightly taller, with visible brown hair and green eyes. Again, the military gear. Did this group raid a military base or something? On the man in the front's left is another girl. She stood out to me. She had bright green hair with visible blue highlights, bright blue eyes, and tanned olive skin. She was in some type of dress. She looked badass with that military gear on top of the dress. She was carrying a weapon too, with a gas mask in her other hand. She had some scars on her visible skin, but that only made her stand out more from the group. It was beautiful. My thoughts are interrupted by the man in front talking. He seems to be talking to someone else.
August.
The man speaks, which in return the other man, August, grinned with a laugh.
Hugo, welcome to Midnight. We should be friends.
August says. I can easily tell he's manipulative and someone who's having way too much fun for the situation. The man, Hugo, seemed to grimace and frown. He stepped forward.
Right, let's hurry this thing up.
He crossed his arms as he took a seat on the nearby couch. The group all followed along, sitting or standing nearby the couch. August sat across from him. He seemed relaxed. It looked as if he already won this argument.
Right, well, you want your friends back, don't you?
August seemed to laugh. He leaned back on the couch. Hugo, who I could see, glared at August.
Yes.
Hugo's answer was simple and straightforward. August seemed more entertained. He fixed his posture as he spoke again.
What if I refuse?
The entire group seemed to grow tense, even the girl and the guy in the cage with me. The guy on the ground begins to wake up, hearing the commotion. The rest of the conversation was a bit of a blur as I tried to focus on the two in the cage trying to free us. Right before we got out of the cage, another girl approached. She seemed more out of it, but the group seemed to know who she was. One of them, the guy on the right, stepped forward, speaking in a low and concerned tone. He speaks, lifting up his hand to reach out to the girl, Lilac. Lilac recoiled and stepped away.
Who are you to touch me?
He asked in a weary voice, which caused the guy to step back and flinch. He looked hurt, betrayed. The girl next to me managed to get the door open and help us out of the cage. We rushed to the group, the pretty girl I saw earlier pulling me away from Lilac right before I could be grabbed as a hostage again. Looking up at this girl, I could see her face, scars. God, she was beautiful. Everything else is blurry. All I heard was yelling, then screams of grenade. A mask was put onto my face as the group ran to the exit to escape the smoke and explosion. I clung to the girl's hand, running with her to escape the chaos. Some stayed behind, but a big group of us just ran for the nearby city, Olympus. Then it clicked. That's where I needed to go. Where that officer wanted to take me. To a place of safety. I'm safe now. Chapter 3. Friends? A few days had passed since I was freed from that cage. I was fed well and met a lot of people. That woman from before was kind enough to let me stay with her. I learned that her name was Moon. It was fitting, as her eyes were as beautiful as a blue moon. We received an invite to a beach party after the events happened. The weather was nice, and the area we lived in was relatively safe. So I could see why we were having a beach day. I was excited. Moon just chuckled at me before she spoke. Moon spoke. Her voice was calm and encouraging, making me feel a bit more relaxed about it. I looked up at her. "What about you?" I asked, watching as she moved to sit on her bed. Thought about her words for a second before nodding. "I guess so, but what do I wear? I don't really have a swimsuit, and..." I trailed off for a second. "I can't really swim." Moon laughed. It was a teasing laugh as she smiled brightly at me. Her smile was as bright like a star, beautiful and easy to get distracted by. I smiled back at her, careful of my face scar. I glanced up as she spoke. My mom taught me." I nodded as she handed me some blue and white fabrics. Moon smiled more. She waved me to do my work as she sat and watched, letting a comfortable silence wash over us. Just in time for the beach party, I put on my newly sewn swimsuit and cover-up, heading to the beach location. Already people were there. Hesitantly, I made my way over to the group. There was Hugo. He seemed to be the leader of sorts for the group. Next to him was the girl with the pink hair, the guy from the cage, and the boy with the darker brown hair. There was someone else. A girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, well fit and toned. They all greeted me, and we all sat down to wait for the others. Once we felt like no one else would show up, we decided to introduce ourselves. I learned everyone's name and a hobby of theirs. There was Ashley, a mechanic, Aidan, a sports guy, Lilac, a cat lady, Cecelia, a reader, Hugo, a protester, and Mason, a veteran. It was an interesting group of people, and I felt like that just made it even better. The rest of the beach day, we made sand castles. People went swimming or tanning by the waters and did some fishing. After a bit, the sun started to go down. We sat and watched as the sunlight dimmed to fade into a beautiful night sky. After that, I felt a bit more at ease from the chaos of the apocalypse. Returning home, I found Moon asleep on her bed. I smiled to myself and left her alone before heading up to my room. Changing back into my normal clothes, I noticed something on my arm. It was red and throbbing in pain. Looking closer, I saw it was the bite mark. My eyes widened, and immediately I ran to the bathroom, before vomiting up my own blood and mucus. Gasping for air, I coughed and gagged. My lungs feel like they're on fire. It took a few moments to catch my breath and fully grasp what was happening to me. Already, I was pale in the face. It wouldn't be long until I fully became one of those monsters. I decided to lay down for the night, falling asleep almost immediately. Maybe tomorrow will be a better day. Chapter 4. New Adventure. It's been a few days since the beach party. I told Moon what we did during the day, and we talked for hours. We talked even while baking together. I got to teach her a little recipe I picked up from my parents. A sweet cake-like treat with icing for filling and layered cakes. She loved it, and it made me feel like she loved me. After that baking session, we received a call from Hugo. Him and Mayfield asked for us to come to the church to discuss a new location to investigate. Moon glanced at me, and I nodded. We gear up and we head out for the church, meeting the others there, Aidan, Lilac, Ashley, Cece, Hugo, and Mayfield. I go to talk to Cece for a bit before the meeting began. The rundown of the meeting was simple. Go to a nearby town and see if their close friend Holly was there. We had to be careful of raiders. Not fully understanding the issue, I glanced at Moon for context. She soon explained to me that Holly was a nun and a good friend of Cece and Hugo. She had gone missing when the group had raided a military base. With this understanding, I nodded and followed the group into the highways. We walked for some miles, coming across a crushed plane, filled with clothes and expired food. We walked past it, as though I'd make a note to check it out later again. After a few more miles, we reached a gas station. Mayfield says to everyone. We agreed and snuck over to the truck nearby the station. One by one, we climbed in, hiding in the crates in the corners of the truck. It was a few hours before we arrived at the town we needed to go to. It seemed alive. We all stayed near the big group and took cover in a treehouse nearby, before eventually being found by the residents of this town.